Today, we're not going to learn anything new about fractions today because I want it to soak in, but we are going to combine our rules for negatives and positives and what we learned about fractions. We're going to combine those today. There she is. Okay, so those of you that have numbered your packet in your worksheets, I'm looking at page 14. Okay, and I'm going to be doing number 1 for you. This is the page that we're working on right now, if you want to look at it just a second. You don't have to have it in front of you, but I want to let you know which ones we're working on. All right, I'm going to do number 1, and we're going to apply the things that we found out from yesterday. So we have 4/6 plus, and they put this in parentheses, 5/9. And those parentheses are just for emphasis and for clarity. It's just because it was a negative and they want to make sure that you see that negative away from this positive. Okay, so we found out yesterday that if they don't have common denominators, especially if they don't have common denominators, but all the time when we're adding or subtracting, we write it vertically. I think it's just easier to understand and keep track. So we're going to say 4/6 plus, and it's a negative 5/9. You don't have to put the parentheses there, just as long as you understand that it's plus and negative. Now we found out, let's take care of that part first. We found out that if you have a positive and a negative together, we can circle those up and just come up with one sign. And that would be a negative. Okay, so we're going to make it a minus. 4/6 minus 5/9. Okay, you just need to get used to that. If I have two negatives together, I'll change it to a positive. But if I have a plus and a minus together, I change it to a minus or a negative. Okay, you will find out one of the things that trips up a lot of the students is, well, is it negative or is it minus? You can use those interchangeably, but there are times that you have to use one or the other on the calculator, and that comes with practice. Okay, it just comes with practice. I'll explain if we hit something like that. Now we've looked at the denominators, and we know that we cannot do this problem. It's an addition or a subtraction problem of fractions, and it cannot be done without common denominators, okay? And so yesterday, we learned how to find a common denominator by finding the least common multiple. And so even if you can see what it is, let's go through the practice so that when you hit one that you don't know, then you'll know how to get it. What we did yesterday is you do your factor tree, or prime factorization, they call it. And we're going to find two numbers that multiply together to make 6, anything except 1. So we have 2 times 3 makes 6. And we keep on coming down on that tree until we hit a prime number. Now, a prime number is a number that can only be divided by 1 in itself. So we found out yesterday that 2 is a definite prime number because the only thing it will break down into is a 2 times 1. Same goes for 3. We circle the primes because later on we're going to have larger trees, and we don't want the primes to get lost, so you don't leave one of the primes out. Okay, I think you had some trouble with that yesterday. Okay, and so let's do a factor tree here. It's 3 times 3. And so whenever we get to the bottom, that means everything at the bottom is already circled, so we know we're finished. Okay, now to find the least common multiple, we look at all the numbers, the different types of numbers that are being used, and we see that there's some 2s, and we see that there's some 3s. Okay, now what we found out yesterday, that the least common multiple, you look at these separately and you see which one was used the most times. Was it used the most times here or here? So we look at the 2 and we say it was used one time here, nothing here. So we're going to use 1, 2. And then we look at the 3s and we say, we only used it once here. We used it twice here. We're going to use it the most. Now we're not adding them together. We're just using the most times. So 3 squared, because that's 2 of them instead of the 1. 2 to the first power is 2. 3 squared is 9. When we multiply that, we find out that the least common multiple or common denominator is 18. Okay? And as you do this, I think it'll get easier and faster as we go. And Brandy, we have a separate sheet that I gave them the option to get, and it's just finding least common multiples. Practice, 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 practice on the whole sheet. So I'll get you that in a little bit if you want it.
Okay.
Okay, so we found out the common denominator is going to be 18. So when I have fractions that have different denominators, I come out because we're going to make another fraction. And we're going to put the common denominator. Common means the same in both cases. Might get messy here in a minute, so I'll do this, okay? Now, when you have your common denominator, which we found, now we have to find out what goes in the numerator position or the top. So you can start on either one of these. For some reason, I always start at the bottom. 9 times what gives me 18? 2. So whatever I do to the bottom of a fraction always has to be done exactly the same way on the top, times 2. So this one changes to 10/18. 5/9 is the exact same thing as 10/18. Let's do the same thing up here. 6 times what? 3. And so I have to do exactly the same thing to the top, which gives me 12. Now you can completely ignore all of this. I started marking this out because some of my students have wanted to go back and forth and got confused. Okay, as soon as you find common denominators, you don't need any of this stuff anymore. And it'll help if you get your sticky note and cover it over so your brain doesn't go crazy. Okay, sometimes, and OCD students or, ADHD students, sometimes this is just too much mess. So cover it over because all you need is this now. Okay, now remember, we need to have the sign out here, and you need to pay close attention to the sign because now, yesterday we were adding, but now that plus and that minus changed to minus. So I have 12/18 minus 10/18. Be sure you go through the sign, okay? So 12 minus 10, we know the answer is going to be 18ths because that was our common denominator, and 12 minus 10 is 2, which is a fine answer, but it's not the best answer because what? Because it can go lower, 2 will go into it, and so let's go to lowest terms. Now we decided that the instructions lots of times aren't going to tell you to go to lowest terms. You just know, okay? Always go to lowest terms. So y'all told me that the top and the bottom will divide by 2. And so now I have 1 over 9. And so the answer to this problem right here is 1 over 9. It seems like a lot because I need to go slow to explain, but you all will get faster and faster at this. Let me pick another one off of that page. I think, let me see. Yeah, let's do 4B. 4B. Any other questions on this? Remote people? Any questions on what we did here?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Okay. Let me turn this. There we go. All right. That was nice to have a clean one. Now here we go. I know, right?
Should I go wash that thing?
I tried one time and it was just a mess.
Get another one.
Maybe I could start doing this. I wonder if that'll work. Look at that. Maybe. Not much difference. All right. Okay, so 4B says -8/10 minus a negative number 2, 6. I think I wrote that. Yes. We want to work this problem now. And since it's fractions and since it does not have common denominators, then we're going to write it vertically. It's just easier. Try to keep this from being confusing. Okay, so we have -8/10 minus a negative. Well, I don't think I want to put the parentheses there. Minus a negative 2, 6. This is what we want. Now, before you even try to find common denominators, let's take care of the sign. Just get it out of the way, okay? We have 2 negatives right here next to each other, and that makes a positive. So immediately, go ahead and take care of that. That's an easy fix. Okay, and then after we do that, we look at the denominators, and they're not the same. So I know, I like to put everything out here that I know of. Okay, so I'm going to make it equal to a different fraction, an equivalent fraction, but different. Okay, our denominators are 6 and 10. Let's go through the process. So I have 6 and 10. Make my factor tree. Factor tree. All of these are prime on the first level. So our common denominator, or least common multiple, is going to be, we have 2s, we have some 3s, and we have some 5s. Now it's best to go ahead and list all these first, because if you don't, you might leave one out. Okay, so let's look at all the 2s. There's 1 2 on this side and 1 2 on that side. So we're just going to use 1. Remember, we're not adding them together. We're just going to use it where it's used the most. 3s, I have 1 here, none of them here, so I'm going to use 1. And again, the 5s. I look here, no 5s, there's 1, so we're going to use 1. 2 to the first is 2. 3 to the first is 3. 5 to the first is 5. So we're going to multiply. We multiply those together and we get 30. So our least common multiple, or our common denominator, is going to be 30. Everybody good? So 30 is our common denominator. Remember, it goes on the bottom of both of them because that's what common means. Now, what did I multiply here?
5
Times 5. If you are a person who really needs the calculator, then take 30 divided by 6 and you can find out this box. If you take the big one and divide by the smaller one, you can find out what goes in that box, okay? So we have 10 30ths there. I had to multiply by 3. And so I multiply by 3 here. And I get, remember, pull the sign with it, negative 24. Now, we go from here over to here. All we still need is this plus. And remember that we always go through the sign. Okay, now, be careful, this is where you use your rules. I have a negative number plus a positive number. Look at your rules. When the signs are opposite,
It makes it a 1.
then I subtract. I think subtract, that's what your thing says. If I'm adding opposite signs, I think subtract, so it's 14, right? So I have 14 over 30, but then you be careful, you give it the sign of the largest number, the sign of the largest looking number. So the answer is going to be negative. It's the correct answer. Best answer?
Yep.
I was going to say, do you see me sitting here? It's a no. It's not the best answer. Why?
Because it can still go down.
It can still go lowest terms, okay? So what will the top and the bottom divide by?
7. And
Well, 7 is okay for this, but this won't divide by 7, and it has to be the same thing. So what do both of them divide by? 2, okay? And so notice that we're dividing by the same thing. It has to be the same thing. And so now a negative divided by a positive stays negative. So I have a negative 7 over 15. Y'all see? Be careful of your negatives because today we're going to work on them a lot on your worksheets. Now, one thing I will caution you about, sometimes you'll see that it's going to divide by 2 and it works. But always look at your last answer and see if it will go down further. In this case, it will not, because the only thing the top will divide by is 7, and 7 won't go into 15. So we're there. This is the final answer. So there are negative rules that you're going to have to remind yourself of. We did those a couple of weeks ago. So make sure that you remind yourself and look back at your rules for adding and subtracting negatives. Okay? You guys are fine. Irene, you okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were. She's like, I've got to tell you a story about myself. I was maybe 5th grade, I don't know. The teacher was up talking. And I noticed that the way, and those of you that wear glasses will know, I noticed the way the light was hitting my glasses, I could see my eyelashes and I could see the little tiny hairs that you can't see, that are on your skin. And so I thought, that is amazing. So here's what I was doing. And I was trying to watch. I was looking, and the teacher saw me. Oh, it was so embarrassing. What are you doing? It's fascinating. Okay. So worksheet page 14. Have y'all done that? Or is that just me? Have y'all done that? Now that's dumber. Okay, try it when the light gets. Okay, that was page 14. You should be able to do everything on there. Some of them already have common denominators, so you don't have to worry about it. Would you look at the next page? It has words on it. Heaven forbid, words. 2 pages of words. Oh no. But notice the title. It says adding like fractions. So this page, all of them are going to have common denominators, and you're going to be adding fractions, okay? So chill out. Let's look at number 1. Detroit receives 8/5 inches of snowfall on Christmas morning. It receives 3/5 inches of snowfall by evening. Okay, how many inches of snowfall in all? And y'all found out early on in your life, it says in all, or the total, we're going to add. So it says, how many inches of snowfall in all did Detroit receive on Christmas Day? So how are you going to work this?
305 and then 305.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll add 8.
See, this is what it already had on Christmas morning and got this much more during the day.
The common is 5.
So common denominator is 5. We don't even have to go out to the side. We don't have to find the least common multiple, nothing, because it has the common, it already has common denominator. So we know our answer is going to be fifths,
Over 11.
and we've got 11 over 5 because we go 8 plus 3. Remember to come through the sign, y'all. It'll trip you up if you don't. So will this simplify down to a lower term?
Yes.
It will?
No.
The top and the bottom divides by? No, this is lowest terms. So it's very possible, I didn't even look on the back, it's very possible this is the answer. But on word problems, we need to put the units. Okay, is that what it says?
It lowered it.
Did they change it to a mixed?
Yeah.
Okay. Pretend you didn't look at the answer. How would you change this to a mixed fraction?
Put the
Divide
top
it.
dog in.
We're going to put the 11, the top dog goes inside the house, divided by 5.
That's because the number on top is bigger than the number on bottom?
Not because, oh, that we're changing it to mixed.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Okay, we find out how many times, how many sets of 5 are in here. There's 2 of them. That 5 times 2 is 10. We always subtract, and there's a remainder of 1 left. Now, in grade school, we put remainder of 1. But when we're trying to find a mixed fraction, all we do is take the leftover and put it over the divisor. So this and this, inches. Word problems, we need the units, okay? This and this answer are both fine. Just depends on what your multiple choice answers are.
They can have both on the test, right? So we can either get 50-50
No,
or
they
we'll
won't.
just have one.
They'll only have one or the
Okay.
other. They will not do that to you.
Okay.
Okay. They won't have both of these in the multiple choice is what she was asking. They won't do that. Okay. All right. So that takes care of that page. Then the next page is also word problems, but these are different denominators. We're here. But notice the top, it just gives you a little hint, and I try to take you in slowly through things, okay? And so up at the top, notice that it says add. We're going to be adding everything, so you don't have to worry about picking things out of these words yet. A recipe for banana pudding calls for 2/3 cups sugar for the flour mixture and a 1/4 cup of sugar for the meringue topping. How many cups of sugar in all is required to make this banana pudding? So how many total in all? That means plus. So I have 2/3 cups sugar, and I still have to measure out another 1/4 for the meringue. Okay, we're just going to add, and when we do, we find out that we have different denominators, so we're going to have different fractions. 3 and 4. 3 is already prime. The only way it'll break down is 3 and 1. This is 2 and 2. So our least common multiple is going to be 1 3 and 2 2s. 3 times 4, and so our common denominator is going to be 12. Now I'll tell you a shortcut, but I don't want you to use this shortcut unless you just get in a bind and you can't figure out a common denominator, okay? Okay, and we will use it later when we get into polynomials. But I want to tell you that if you get stuck and you can't find a common denominator, you can always multiply these together and it will be a common denominator. It won't be the lowest one most of the time, but you can multiply your denominators together and you will always have a common denominator. In this case, it just happened, okay? So, and I'll remind you of that later. So we had to take this times 3, 4 times 3 to get to 12. So I have to take this one times 3, which gives me 3. I had to take this one times 4. So times 4. And I have 8. Okay, and remember, you don't have to mess with any of this, but remember your sign. So now I have 12s for sure, and 8 plus 3, 8 plus 3 is 11. Now, another shortcut that you can start to get used to is if your numbers are close together like this, just one off, most of the time they will not, it won't simplify at all. You're there, okay? And the top isn't bigger than the bottom, so there's no mixed fraction to change to. And again, this is cups. You can put a C or cups. Let's try to get used to putting the units if we have a word problem and it tells you what we're working with. Everybody good? Okay. Let me look at the next 3 pages because it's the same stuff. It just says subtraction. And so we're going to be subtracting. The first, which is page 17, all of these, when it says proper fractions, they mean that all of them are the same denominators, okay? And proper fractions, the top is smaller than the bottom. Okay, some more, page 18, they just put it in vertical form for you. These are different denominators. Vertical ones, some more practice, subtracting different denominators. Page 20. These are improper fractions, so it's possibility that you will be changing to a mixed fraction depending on what the answer comes out to be. Now, the answers on the back of your paper sometimes don't have the mixed fraction, but practice that. Practice getting a mixed fraction, and if you want to check the answers, I've already changed my answers to include the mixed fraction. So you can come and look if you need to. And then we probably do one of these just to remind you, but now I'm on page 21. Page 21. And now this includes mixed fractions. And so just to remind you, let's do number 1 on this page. Subtracting unlike fractions. And the first one starts 8.5 minus 2 2/8. Okay. I haven't heard much of you guys on remote. Are you doing okay? Sherry, Josh?
Yes, ma'am, I'm good. On this page, I was working on it yesterday, and so could you do number 8 also?
On which page?
This page that you're on, to subtract and
Okay,
unlike
so
fractions.
we're going to do number 1 and number 8. Is that what you're
Yes,
asking?
yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. So number 1 is 8.5 minus, remember to make this solid so you don't forget to minus 2 and 2/8. This is what they want you to do. Now we don't have to do anything with two negatives together or anything, so we're done with that. We see that we have different denominators, but we also have mixed fractions. And it's going to be much easier for you to work if you go ahead and change these mixed fractions to improper fractions before we worry about common denominator. Okay, so do y'all remember how to do these? What is this one? Check mark. 17 over 2. Let's explain. The check mark method means multiply these two, the big and the denominator. 8 times 2 is 16, and then add the one that's on top. That gives us 17, and you always put it over the denominator. So try this one.
Same. No. 19 over 8.
Almost.
18.
18 over 8, because 2 times 8 again is 16, 17, 18, and it's over 8. So this will give you practice of changing, mixed fractions to improper fractions. This is the easiest way to do this.
Miss Deborah,
Yes.
is it wrong? Is it wrong to say subtract the 2 from the 8 and then find the common denominators on the fractions? Because my mind is kind of programmed that way.
Well,
and I'm having a hard time remembering the check mark.
It will work for you sometimes, but I would need to teach you an extra step, and this, I'll explain it. Yes, you could subtract the 2 from the 8 and get a 6. But when you found the common denominators here, if this fraction is smaller than this one, you're not able to subtract something that's larger, right?
Yes.
So that means then you would have to borrow from the 8,
yes.
and you don't borrow 10 like you do in regular numbers, in integers.
Okay.
You have to borrow however many of that fraction you borrowed. And it's just harder
Okay.
to keep that straight. I don't mind teaching anybody that, but I found out in teaching classes, it's better to just teach you one way.
Okay.
If you guys privately want to know the other way, I am perfectly fine with showing you, and you would understand, but why should I mix you up?
Well,
It's-
I'm sorry. Well, it seems like that's the way I learned how to do it. And so I understand clearly what you're saying. But
Okay.
I kind of get lost in it. But there on the other hand, I keep forgetting to do the check mark. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. So if you guys want to take a break and look at your phone, I'm going to show her the other way. If you want to see the other way, okay. If not, just don't be loud. Okay, if you want to just ignore it, I don't want to know any other way. I'm going to show her real quick, okay? Here's the other way. 8 1/2 minus 2 2/8. Okay?
Okay.
Now, if you find common denominators for this, it's going to be 8ths. So I have 8 and something 8ths, which will be 4 8s, right? Oh, it's not going to work on this one. So let's do this. This is an example. I'm going to change this so I can show you what I mean.
Okay.
Did you change that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so down here, I have 2 5 8ths. All right?
Yes.
And I'm subtracting. So I look here and I say, oh, I can't take 5 away from 4. So I'm going to have to borrow from this 7, right?
Yes.
Okay. But when I borrow, I can't just put a 10 here. That doesn't work. These are 8ths. So I'm borrowing 8 8ths. I'm borrowing 1, but I have to change it into 8ths. So now I have 7 and 8 plus 4 are 12 8ths. minus 2 5/8. Do you see the borrowing process?
Yes, I'm gonna have to get down with that check mark. Somehow or another, I'm gonna have to try to remember that check mark.
So 5 7/8 is the answer. It's not 6, like you would think it would be. The borrowing part, you have to get used to. You're not borrowing 10, but you're borrowing this many, like 8/8 in this case. If the denominator was 12, it would be you borrow 12 twelfths. Or if this was 2, you borrow 2 halves.
So basically, you would borrow from the 8, would leave that a 7. Then you would add the 8 and the 4 together.
Actually, yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so if you want to do that, just be very careful. I think I'm going to stick to telling everybody this. This can be confusing, and it seems like an extra step that you really don't need. Okay?
Well, it's like it's programmed in my mind, some of it, because that's the way they taught us, back in the day. You know what I'm saying?
Of what?
That's the way they taught us back in the day, but I forgot a step in the borrowing, so I gotta try to reprogram for that check mark. I gotta try to remember that check mark, because when I look at it automatically, I want to start borrowing. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Right,
habit.
right. And you don't want to borrow 10 because you're not working with tenths. You're only working with eighths.
Yes. Okay.
Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, back on track, guys. I'm back to our problem. Okay? So we did the check mark here and we changed to an improper fraction, did the check mark here, changed to an improper fraction. We're still using minus, but I don't need this anymore. But I don't have common denominators, so now I'm going to do the common denominator. And if I do 8 and 2, this one doesn't break down. This one becomes 2 times 2 times 2, only because I know. Okay, and so the only number we have are 2's, and this is where they're used the most. So our common denominator is 8. I only multiplied by 1 here. So I multiply by 1 here and get 18. I multiplied by 4 here. And so I have to multiply by 4 here. So I get 68. Is that correct? That is 28, yeah. And so all of this stuff that I've manipulated, I don't need it anymore, but I need my sign. Now the denominators are the same, they're eighths. We do the subtraction, 68 subtract 18, which is going to be 50 over 8. 50 over 8. Will that simplify?
Yes.
Before we change to mixed. Will it simplify? Divide by what? 2. So let's, and since that stuff's over there, I'm just going to go backwards. If that's okay with y'all, I don't want to mix you up. So now I have 25 over 4. So 25 over 4 is the lowest terms for an improper fraction. We won't go any further. Now practice changing it to a mixed fraction. This is correct. Something's wrong. Oh, no, because I changed that problem. Okay. Now, just to clarify, when I was showing Sherry this information over here on the side, I changed the problem. So if you wrote that down, it's not going to be the same answer as this one because they're different problems. Okay, so this answer is fine. This answer is fine. They're the best. Just depending on what they have in your multiple choice. Any questions? Okay, and Sherry asked for one more, and then, as far as I'm concerned, I'm gonna let you go to, well, not go.
All right.
You can go on breaks, but I'll let you go to work the rest of this packet all the way to page 25. Let's work page, or what number, Sherry? 8.
8.
Eight, eight,
Oh, no,
eight.
no, the same 21 on 8.
Oh.
Page 21, number 8. So we have 4.5 minus 1 2/3. So we look at the signs, and there's no signs that are together that we need to mess with. So we see mixed fractions, and probably the easiest thing is to do our check mark and change to an improper fraction. So we can avoid any kind of borrowing. So what is this?
9/2.
9, excuse me, 9/2. This one is
5/3.
5/3. Now we don't need this stuff. We don't have common denominators. So we've got a 2, which is prime, and a 3, which is prime. So common denominator is going to be 6. So what goes here? What's it? What's this numerator? 10.
10.
What's this numerator? 27. So now we have common denominators, all the signs are fine. Let's get rid of all of this stuff except the sign. So now I have 27 minus 10, which is 17/6. You look to see if it's lowest terms. It is. 17's prime. It won't go down any further. Okay. And so this is a correct answer in improper fraction form. Now let's change it to mixed. Because we took the 17 and divided it by 6. Okay, 17 divided by 6. 6 will go in there twice to make it 12. And then there'll be 5 left over. 5/6. Sort of? Okay. There any questions on what we did today? So our main focus today was to review common denominators. Make sure you remember your rules for negatives, positives, add, subtract, and then practicing changing from improper to mixed fractions. Okay, and now it's time to practice, practice, practice. Do not run away from words in our problems. No running away from words. Are there any questions while we're still on the recording? Or another one that you see yet that I need to help with? You okay, Josh?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm so glad to see you back on today. You and your fiance feeling better?
I am. She still feels, she still got some side effects from it, but I feel better.
Okay, well, we'll keep her in our prayers and you stay strong, okay?
Oh, yeah.
We'll see you tomorrow, and I'm not going to do any new information tomorrow. So I'm going to open a Zoom, maybe do some more examples on what we are already doing, but it'll mostly be questions and answers tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay?
That's fine.
So, do you need, everybody has the worksheets? Sherry, you have the worksheets?
Yes, ma'am.
And Josh, you have the worksheets 1 through 24 or
Yeah.
25? Okay.
Yes, I got it.
Let's see, Friday. Yeah, I think I'll just use it for a work day and questions and answers. On Monday, we'll start multiplying and dividing fractions. Okay, Monday. All right,
Thank you.
one more week, then Christmas time. I'll see y'all tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.